with the one, the only Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Ayahuasca himself, who has intend to play for the New York Jets coming up in this 2023 NFL season. And Sean, I had said, and you might agree, you might disagree, I don't know how you feel, but I had said, from Aaron's perspective, I don't get it. I don't even know if you add Aaron Rodgers to this Jets roster, if they're a playoff team in the AFC with all the competition. I don't even know if they're second. They're certainly third best in their division, but I don't know if I would take them today over Miami or Buffalo. And when I look at Green Bay, and I get it, the relationship with him seemingly soured. Aaron has not shown up to OTAs, all of that, and I understand that you want to move forward with Jordan Love. But also, you look at the NFC, and the Lions are better, obviously. Chicago, we'll see what they do. We'll see if Justin Fields can make a year-free leap on Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen. But really, it's San Francisco, and we don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be. And then it's Philly and Dallas. So, if I'm Green Bay, I'm like, even though we didn't even make the playoffs last year, I don't know. I feel like the path to the Super Bowl is just a lot easier if I was Aaron and I would have stayed in Green Bay.
I mean, there's so many ways to kind of just take this all in. I think, honestly, this split was inevitable after last season just fell apart after that 3-1 start. You think, oh, they're going to be just fine. Then it's like, oops. And then they take us on the whole roller coaster ride at the end. I honestly have been trying to process it, and it just felt like as soon as the Jets thing popped up, it's like, all right, this feels like an inevitability that he's going to want to move on. And honestly, I mean, Garrett Wilson could be his new Devontae Adams, although, I guess a little bit in the type of receiver they are, it's a little bit different. You got, the Jets signed Allen Lazard, they got Nicole Hardman. I mean, and the defense isn't bad, I don't think. Pardon me, with the Jets. It's a very unique situation, and that's what I was just looking at too. Is just like the NFC is wide open, but I guess for Rodgers, I mean, he's a very philosophical kind of dude, it seems. And even if I wanted to say, oh, maybe he's doing this because he knows, he'll still get his number retired at Lambeau. He'll still, have a legacy there. I just, I don't really have a word for it. It's just, it felt like it was inevitable that he'd be going to Green Bay just from an outsider's perspective. And I mean, not Green Bay, to New York. And maybe this is just, him trying to capitalize on some end of career stuff before it all goes down the drain.
So there were two quarterbacks, obviously, in the news going into NFL free agency. There was obviously a lot of quarterbacks, with the two biggest ones, and I thought they were both going to stay in their respective teams, and they're both seemingly going to leave. One of them is Rodgers, and the next one is Lamar Jackson. And for the life of me, Sean, and I know me and you have gone back and forth on this a lot, the contract situation with him in Baltimore, I don't understand for the life of me. I understand there's mobility, there's injury concerns, but we saw Baltimore last year without him, outside of the playoff game where they played relatively okay against Cincinnati. Their offense was almost unwatchable with Tyler Huntley being their signal caller last year. So I don't know, man. Baltimore to me goes from a Super Bowl contender to a non-existent team without him at the quarterback position. I would pay him. I know the conversation with the Deshaun Watson money is where this thing kind of gets tricky, but I would pay him, $40+ million a year, because for me, he is a franchise quarterback, and we've seen guys like Daniel Jones just get $40 million, and Lamar Jackson is way more talented than Daniel
And
Jones.
it's not,
sorry,
that's not the question. It's just like the whole agent thing. I think, honestly, the agent thing is what's getting it all hung up. Lamar, look, at this point, from what we kind of know, and whether or not it's true or not, he wants the full guarantee. There's been all the comparison between him and Deshaun, this and that. I mean, I don't think, with NFL teams being able to not pay Kyler, Russell, and a couple of the other quarterbacks recently fully guaranteed contracts. I mean, it's just Deshaun and Kirk Cousins. I mean, those are the only two. Kirk Cousins was a special case because of the, 2 franchise tags, didn't get a third one. But I mean, if just Sean was even willing to settle for 90 or 95% guarantees. I mean, I know that it's, the money, and it's, he sees what he's worth, and obviously we don't see it the same way. I just don't know how this is going to end. I think it's going to probably end with him going back to Baltimore, but on the 1-year tag. He's it's just like, I'm trying to think of who I was thinking about the other day, but they're not willing to admit a mistake, basically. Like Lamar, especially, he doesn't want to admit that he could have gotten what he needed, with an agent. I mean, Deshaun Watson threw a whole monkey wrench into this. I mean, I've seen people say, just a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to go into everything, but I mean, I would rather have just seen Lamar have signed by now, because it's just, at this point, it's ridiculous. Like, all the teams that came out and said we're not interested, Panthers makes sense now as to why they chose to do what they did. But I mean, I'm just surprised that Bill Belichick, of all people, hasn't decided to go and pluck Lamar.
Yeah,
That was
it's
one. And even
it's
Green Bay,
very
like, if you can trade
fascinating.
Rodgers, it's just driving me insane. The fact that, let's say Joe Burrow had Lamar's exact skill set and had the same injuries. I still think that Burrow would be picked up right away. And
Possibly.
I know I'm implying a lot here, but I just don't know what it is about Lamar. Like, it's the same thing that happened with Cam Newton back in the draft. Do not forget, for people who, and I had to go back and rewatch this, and I'm like, holy crap. People were thinking Blaine freaking Gabbert were way better than Cam Newton and should have been the number 1 overall pick for a time. And even Jake Locker. I mean,
Yeah, I remember
this is just
Jake
where it feels
Walker.
like, and I hate to tread into this territory, Brandon. It feels like, African American quarterbacks still have a lot to prove. I mean, there's even been some radio hosts I've heard just with some slight doubts about Jalen Hurts.
Yes,
It's like you don't
and
hear that
I've heard
about
it.
other quarterbacks who are not African Americans or black. I mean, it's driving me up a wall, because these people have so much more of a hurdle to prove, despite proving that they can do it. Even Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback of color, and he doesn't get the doubt. And it just seems like I'm just frustrated at this point with how the NFL is treating some of these quarterbacks. I mean, I hate to bring that racial component into this, but I think there's, like, I think it's a very, very, very small factor, but I think that's there just because we've seen it time and time again with the good old boys club.
So, Sean, we have not talked about sports in a while. I am the biggest Philadelphia Eagles fan, probably, that you know.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
I know on that date that still very much haunts me, February 12th, 2023. You were thinking of me while watching Super Bowl 57 and watching as an incomplete pass falls to the ground. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to get a stop. They're going to get the ball back. They're going to be down 6 with a timeout and 2 minutes to go. And Jalen Hurts is going to lead the Philadelphia Eagles down the field, and we're going to win the Super Bowl on a game-winning drive. Oh, wait. Watch this. There is a yellow flag
2
like
years in a
this
row.
one right here
2
on
years
the
in a row.
field. And I agree. And Sean, I've said the same thing. Listen, I'm going to take this in 2 perspectives. Number one, James Bradbury got away with a holding call in the first quarter. I absolutely acknowledge it. It was on a 3rd down play. It should have been a holding call. They should have called it right then and there. However, because they did not call that holding call, that told me as a fan, and it probably told the players, okay, the referees are going to let us play. They did not call any, particular holding call or anything like that up until that point of the game with 2 minutes left to go in the game. And to your point, the same thing happened the year before. Logan Wilson gets called for a ticky-tack hold that was, to be honest with you, not a hold on Cooper Kupp that extended the drive and on the Rams to get a touchdown, where they probably would have kicked a field goal in that situation, which allowed the Rams to win the Super Bowl. I don't know what it is, because it happened arguably in the AFC Championship game as well, where they called the late in, and the Cincinnati defender on Mahomes that made the field goal a lot closer for Kansas City. these NFL playoff games, and we know how officiating has gone, badly in the MLB, NBA, NHL,
Angel
NFL.
Hernandez.
Yes, Angel Hernandez. But these late playoff games are being decided by referees, and I don't like it. And if you're going to call that Olden call on Bradbury, which by the letter of the law is a Olden call, even though the ball was 10 feet over his head, and if Bradbury didn't even touch him, it would have been incomplete. I don't like it. I think it decided the game. And in my heart of hearts, I truly believe if Jalen Hurts gets that football back, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to at least tie the game and send it to overtime, or Jalen Hurts is going to drive down and win them the game.
I mean, that's a lot of what if scenarios. And I mean, Bradbury said, it was the right call, all that. I mean, it's always interesting because I felt like that was a well-ref Super Bowl for the most part. But it's the biggest game, biggest stage, and it gets magnified. Honestly, we have all seen all the ref ball throughout the regular season. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like 2 years in a row, it's just like you see the same kind of call happen, holding versus pass interference, whatnot. It's just like I don't really know if I can, bang the officiating over all that. It's really just I mean, I've thought about it more and more. It's like there's merits to both sides of the argument, and I don't really know which side I really land on. I think, if the player said that they held and that's, the call on the field, then that's what, I think we talked about. Like, that's what I think, was right. I mean, unfortunately, it decided the game, but, that's where you have to put yourself in the situation where you're not doing that. And I also hear you on the point of, they were calling it and letting it, be, let the players play. I mean, but in case, they kind of go to, throwing the flag and blowing the whistle, I mean, you got to be prepared for that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
it's a tough situation to be in. And especially, he probably got, thousands of letters of hate mail as soon as people found his address, that referee or her, because I know there are some women who are referees in the NFL. So I shouldn't just say he. I don't remember who made the call, but it's not a fun scenario to be in, but he made the right call. And unfortunately, for you, it sucks. For a lot of Philly fans, it sucks. And I get it. Like Browns fans have felt like that for eons at this point since they came back. And even with the drive and all that, it's just there's no perfect way to end that. And it would have been just like, if you could have even just let the flag not fly, and who knows if Hurts would have actually let him down the field. But let's just say, ends up being, third and long, Hail Mary pass batted down, all that. Still a more satisfying ending versus people saying, oh, the NFL is fixed. There are moments where it does feel like that. Yes. And we as fans or people who just, watch the game closely, it's like, man, it just seems like that goes so
again,
perfectly.
me and you are both not blame the ref type people. We just want the officiating to be consistent.
Yeah.
Kind of last NFL question for you is, I'm watching a lot of this offseason. Obviously, I'm going to be very fascinated at what these teams do in the draft. There's a lot of quarterback movement. I'm interested to see what Indianapolis does, who Carolina picks, obviously. But there's a lot of teams that got better in the offseason. We'll see what the Jets do with Rodgers. Obviously, I think the Lions made some real good improvements. They might be favored to win the NFC North next year. We'll see what Chicago does. If they can build that roster up around Justin Fields. I don't necessarily trust our friend Quinn Griffin and Kirk Cousins and his Minnesota Vikings because they won 11 one-possession games at the
Imagine how
wire
Alex
last
Wilcox feels right now.
Yeah, I know, right? So with that being said, are there teams that you looked at this offseason that are like, okay, this is a team that I think potentially missed the playoffs last year that's probably going to make it this year or really improve? And then is there a team that you're thinking, this team, they lost a lot of free agents, or they're going to take a step back, or they were a juggernaut. They're not going to be as good as what they were last year.
I mean, I think even though the Rams shed a lot of contracts and whatnot, I would not rule them out in terms of getting back in it. I mean, they'll hopefully have a healthy Matthew Stafford, uh, and you'll have Cooper Cup, who else? Aaron Donald, a couple of those guys back. I mean, I know it's not the ideal situation. You got to pay the piper at some point, but they're a team that I think, could still get back. I mean, they were just ravaged by injuries all the end of beginning, middle, end of last year. So that was a team. And then I'll give you one more. I'm just trying to remember because it was just such a hectic free agency period where you had just so many teams just going for it. I mean, a team that I felt like kind of regressed. I don't know about New York. Like, even though they got a lot of their guys back, Daniel Jones, this feels like who is it? A Blake Bortles situation to me, where Bortles
Yeah,
played his best in his final year. That's one where I definitely think, there
I
could be
mean,
some regression. But
you
here's the
know,
interesting thing you brought up with Carolina,
go ahead.
who they're going to draft. I was reading the other day on the Athletics, subscription required, all that. Frank Reich's archetype kind of quarterback that he's worked with throughout his career, from Peyton Manning, Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, you name it,
The
all
tall
6 foot
6'3".
plus.
Yep.
I don't know if that rules out Bryce Young, but I would say that definitely puts into play a guy like a CJ Stroud, who had a fantastic pro day yesterday, and you still have Anthony Richardson and was it Leave? I'm trying to
Will
remember
Levis.
I keep getting
Will
it mixed up.
Levis.
I think it's Levi Ellis or whatever it is, but Will Levis. I mean, I think Levis is the one that's never not gonna get picked first. No way in heck.
I agree.
Richardson is interesting because you'd be basically going through the Cam Newton experience again to an extent. But Stroud, I mean, he's the one who I think is going to go number 1 overall. But I'm still not ruling out Bryce Young. I mean, all these teams put out all these smoke screens, and then it gets us all just like
Yeah,
whirled up as fans,
I,
thinking just like he's proven he can play.
I,
Young
I
has proven he can
personally,
play.
so I personally feel like the quarterback class is really close this year. I think number 1 is Bryce Young. In my eyes, I think he is the most talented.
I would just
I
say go
know,
watch the Georgia film. That was the
I,
national title game.
I know there's concerns about obviously his size. I would take Young just over CJ Stroud. I don't know necessarily if Stroud, I think he can play in the NFL, but I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that Ohio State, more than any other school in the nation, and that includes Alabama and Georgia, had the most separation and he had the best receivers. So I don't
He didn't
know.
have Smith and Jigba though. That's what I'll say.
Well, yeah, I mean, he did early in the season, obviously, not
Only for a
towards
game, I think.
the
Only
end
for
of
a
the
game.
season.
There was
So I'm,
no he basically was non-existent on that roster this past year. I
yeah,
mean, Stroud
I'm
like
a little
showed you exactly
concerned.
in that bowl game. Like that, he made every single pass you could make.
Yeah, no,
He was on
that
fire.
was his best game for
And
sure.
honestly, like, after that, and I was at the Michigan game. I was there in person. And I can tell you that Stroud on against Georgia, I mean,
Completely
I think
different
Stroud is going to
quarterback.
be the number 1 pick, and he's going to take, I think, 3 or 4 years to finally become the franchise guy. But he will, and Bryce Young will. I don't know about Richardson. I don't know about Will Levis.
Do you like that clip from the Brands World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brands World podcast right here on YouTube.